Welcome to part 3 of this episode of Asbestos Rewind, Dusted in Vegas. As we mentioned, scientists at UNLV had observed elevated levels of mesothelioma in local hospital records, more than would be expected based on the amount of asbestos expected to be present in Nevada based on the state's historical asbestos usage. Mesothelioma is a rare type of cancer, usually of the chest cavity, and it's caused almost exclusively by asbestos. Especially surprising was the young age of the people with mesothelioma. Asbestos-related diseases like mesothelioma have a long latency, meaning they take decades to appear. People who worked in an industrial job before asbestos was banned in the mid-80s and their families are at much greater risk for asbestos-related cancers like mesothelioma because they had so much exposure to asbestos. Because of that delay, mesothelioma cases tend to be in older people, but many of the people in Clark County with mesothelioma were younger than average. So what was going on? Well, to answer that, we need to ask what exactly is asbestos. That turns out to be exactly what this story in Clark County is all about. Asbestos is a trade name for 6 types of rocks with special properties. The most commonly used type of asbestos is called chrysotile. Chrysotile is what's called a serpentine rock, meaning it has curly, snake-like fibers. The other 5 types of asbestos are made of straight, sharp fibers bundled together in a subgroup known as fibrous amphiboles. There are other amphiboles, and not all are fibrous. Because asbestos is fibrous, when it breaks up, the tiny fibers can be easily inhaled, and when they lodge in the respiratory system or migrate to other parts of the body, they cause harmful scarring, frustrate the body's ability to defend itself, and increase free radicals leading to the formation of cancer. Because asbestos is dangerous to our health, it was largely banned, and engineers have tried to find replacements. Some of the UNLV scientists thought that one of the potential substitute products might be a culprit for the elevated mesothelioma levels. That was a mineral mined near Las Vegas known as polygorsite, but they investigated it, and the research seemed to show that polygorsite was not the culprit. So one of the scientists, a medical geologist named Brenda Buck, teamed up with another geologist at UNLV named Rodney Metcalf to see if there was something on the rocks of southern Nevada that was increasing its mesothelioma rate. Buck and Metcalf think they found the answer, a very rare type of asbestos called actinolite. Although they were surprised to find actinolite in Nevada, the fact that asbestos is causing the increased mesothelioma rates is not surprising, at least not from a medical perspective. That's because although some other mineral dust can lead to mesothelioma, for example workers at nuclear facilities using erionite, most mesothelioma is caused by asbestos exposure. Professors Buck and Metcalf put together their team and collected rocks and used the same kind of dust traps that scientists use to capture airborne DNA to gather sediment from all over the county. They examined the sediment with electron microscopes and other devices to determine the mineral's composition and morphology. And what they found was that dust that had the shape and composition that fit the definition of one type of asbestos, a fibrous amphibole called actinolite. Actinolite is dark, with sharp, needle-like fibers that are easily inhaled when airborne. Actinolite tends to form amidst other rocks. For an in-depth explanation of how asbestos forms in nature, consider watching our Asbestos 101 series. But a quick explanation is this. Amphibole minerals like actinolite form when underground lava called magma fills in the spaces between rocks. Normally, the magma cools quickly and forms obsidian, but when it cools slowly, it forms kind of a congealed soup of minerals, and over millions of years, this soup turns into any of the 5 types of amphibole asbestos, including actinolite. The UNLV investigation found that Clark County's naturally forming actinolite asbestos is potentially carcinogenic, and caution should be taught to local residents to minimize dust when entering the home and avoid dusty winds if possible. The thing was that the UNLV scientists' findings contradicted what we know today about where asbestos forms. Until now, the focus had been on the large veins of asbestos that could contribute to a worldwide market mining and manufacturing asbestos into products. But the scientists at UNLV alleged that there were small veins of actinolite occurring in the rocks of southern Nevada. In the eternal war between environmental danger and the march of progress, for some time the researchers' findings were resisted by some of Nevada's state authorities since it presented a problem for certain civic expansion plans. Some found the asbestos discovery simply too inconvenient to acknowledge. But Brenda Buck's next studies offered strong evidence through animal research that asbestos was the cause of the increased mesothelioma, beyond her having shown that the dust itself was dangerous. Newer state communications acknowledge the danger, and further research at UNLV is ongoing to determine whether some other cause of the increased mesothelioma rates among young Nevadans. The town that started as a train stop from Utah to California has grown exponentially, adding more family entertainment, top restaurants, million-dollar oil paintings from Europe, and an internationally branded shopping center that is the envy of the world. In fact, market research shows gambling is the third biggest draw to Las Vegas after shows, but the number one reason is shopping. That seems unlikely to be affected by the UNLV findings, and even one of their studies acknowledges that the danger is more diluted the further east in Las Vegas you go. So is anyone going to do anything about natural asbestos exposure in southern Nevada? Well, the truth is, with the latency of asbestos, that's the long period of time it takes for the diseases to show up. For many people, this is just an ambiguous fear. And as with any environmental threat, it's not easy to avoid. But it's not a bad idea to use precaution and a professional where needed to test for and remove asbestos when, say, renovating an old building or demolishing a hotel and casino with a Middle Eastern stereotype and the tallest tower in Vegas. In any case, putting your head in the asbestos-tainted sand, as it were, seems unwise. Unfortunately, that caution may involve a pastime dear to my own heart, off-roading. Now, there are few things I love as much as driving off-road and exploring new places, but one of Buck's studies found the dangers of off-roading in southern Nevada, and authorities have suggested proper precautions, including not to linger in or breathe the dust during and after time spent off-road. The Center for Asbestos-Related Disease was founded in Libby, Montana, a town devastated by cases of mesothelioma and other asbestos diseases because of natural asbestos contamination. The center issued guidelines for reducing potential exposure to asbestos, and the guidelines were adopted by the Southern Nevada Health District. We'll put a link to the guidelines in the comments below. If you're spending time outside gardening or hiking, camping or off-roading, the recommendations include a few good tips. Wearing an outer layer of clothing you can remove and stow away in a closed container. Washing your hands and face before eating. Laying a tarp beneath your tent or sleeping bag. Hosing off your shoes, tools, or equipment and wiping them with a damp cloth. And wash your towels with your dusty clothing. Don't shake it out first because that will lead to dust inhalation. Just throw it all in the washing machine, and if there's a dust storm, go inside and get out of that. Spending a lot of time in the dust clouds with somebody else off-roading probably isn't advisable either, at least when you're in Clark County. But if you're going to roll the dice and go off-roading in Vegas, remember those steps to remove dust. That way you make sure that whatever happens in Vegas, you know the rest. Thanks for watching Asbestos Rewind. If you like this video, let the YouTube algorithm know by hitting like, and then let me know by subscribing and commenting about what you liked and what you'd like to see in future asbestos videos. I'm asbestos attorney Justinian Lane, and I'll see you next time on Asbestos Rewind.